how we do things all the time in the district office. Nancy and I are getting the feed right now on changing the modified quarantine, so we're trying to make sense of it while we stand there. So you'll get is the mic on? Okay. So you get a little sense of how this changes literally hour by hour. All summer long since March, we've gotten updates and changes and how things do. So we do our best to come up with the best with the knowledge we have and the requirements we have at that moment, knowing that by the end of the day or the end of the week, it'll probably have changed. So we will sift through that right now. Fortunately, Canyons District has a phenomenal team that has tirelessly worked all summer to try to figure all these things out, and we'll continue to do so. And I have to give a shout out to Nancy as our board president. She's been right there with the administrative team every moment of every waking day for all summer long, just trying to navigate this. But in the meantime, we want to get you guys all trained and ready to go back to school. So the first thing we need to say is thank you. We always give you a big thank you for being involved and for being willing to lead. For some of you, it will be the very first time that you've ever taken on a leadership position. And for some of you, you've been doing this for many years. And we just appreciate your willingness, your kindness, knowing what you're going to go through in any normal year, right? Let alone this year. Knowing that that our schools rely on you, they rely on your attitude, they rely on your leadership, and we just appreciate you and the hours and the time that you will give to make your school and this school year the best it could possibly be in Canyons, and we appreciate that wholeheartedly. So start with the thank you, and PTA is generally speaking the heart and soul of most of our schools. PTA brings the fun, right? Kind of the spirit. School's all about education, but there has to be some education happens better, we know, with parent involvement. It happens better when you can be learning through some fun, and certainly our staff, our volunteers, our parents, and the students all benefit when you guys are there and really helping and making things better. So again, we just want to say thank you. I think I've been introduced. I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator for Canyons and the liaison to PTA. We'll talk a little bit about ways that you'll interact with me this year. If you ever have a PTA question, Tanya, Terry, they're your folks. So if it's a PTA question, you call me, that's great. I likely will just send you on to them or to somebody at the state to answer your questions. If it is a district or a school related question, something about how Canyons works, then please reach out to me. We have a lot of staff, like I just mentioned, working very tirelessly, and they don't, and this isn't meant to be rude, they don't need 45 more bosses, okay? So if you reach out to me, I will make sure to get you whatever answers you need. Sometimes that will involve another district department or another person, another employee, but if you bring it to me first, I will make sure you get your answer and make sure that we're not putting a burden upon another department or another thing. A lot of times that will look like one of the easiest ways. I'll pick on Carson because he's standing there. Carson's our web developer here in the back that's helping us today, and I'll pick on him. He's constantly working to update and to make sure our websites are up to date. If he gets calls from he's getting calls from principals all the time, from us, trying to make sure everything's up to date. If he's also getting calls from PTA saying, hey, this isn't updated on our site, that's just one more person he's having to try to work through, right? Or online registration. When that goes, you contact me instead of the programmer, because he's literally taking 400 or 500 calls an hour, not just one. So if you get hold of me, I will make sure things get for you in the priority and get things done, but always feel free. Don't feel like you're bothering me. You have my cell phone there, as well as my email. I answer my cell phone roughly 24 hours a day. So if you think of something at 2 in the morning and it just pops in your head and you think I'm going to text Susan, I likely will answer you. So just out of kindness, we'll say, if it can wait till 7 in the morning, I appreciate that, because it's right next to my head. I will probably answer it and answer you. But if you're in a meeting or you are, you have a question that comes up, just text me. Feel free to do that at any time, and I will answer you just as quickly as I can. but feel free round the clock. Some of the other things. Building rentals. So if you're using your school building, you work that out with your principal. If for some reason, this isn't particularly for the council and region people, but if there's some reason that you need a building rental outside of your school building that you're in, contact me and we will work through our facilities building scheduler. You have special rates or free rates where possible. Basically, when you have to rent a building in Canyons that's not in your school building that you actually are in, essentially it's free, but if there's any cost incurred, so like for IT, technical help, or for custodial help, if there's a cost incurred, that's passed on. So, but I will work through that with you. The volunteer site, let's go to that and see. Going back up, please. Oh, well, let's talk about that first. I'll follow the slideshow instead of my notes. How's that? So the recognized parent group, Canyons, PTA is the recognized parent group in every school in Canyons District for right now. There's a few reasons for that. We have a lot of respect for PTA and for what you do. You all are sitting here, and this is one of the very reasons, because PTA provides great training, also financial structure and oversight. So as PTA tends to turn over, and parent volunteers in general tend to turn over every year or a couple of years, unless you're Betty Shaw or Karen Ponder and you're here for life. But other than that, usually it turns over constantly. And so about the time that you're done, you know what you're doing, right? And so PTA has a structure in place to help you have a successful year and not get into trouble financially or legally with things, as long as you follow along the rules and the procedures. And it's kind of funny, almost without fail, every few years I'll know of a PTA that's not quite sticking to the rules, to how it's supposed to be done. And that's probably okay that year. It's probably not going to cause a problem. But I can guarantee you, and it's just been a trend, all 11 years we've been Canyons District, within 2 or 3 years, I'm getting a call from either the new PTA president or a principal that says, man, I've got some concerns about whatever it is. And I'll be like, yeah, that's because we stopped following the rules. We stopped doing things by the book. So while it's a pain sometimes, I strongly encourage you to follow the things that are in place for you to be able to do your financial, your note-taking, your whatever. It's there as a protection for you as volunteers and for our schools. Sorry, keep going back. Sorry. One more up, there we go. Stop, okay. Parental involvement, as I've said, that's integral to our schools. We know it, many studies have shown it. We hope and wish that all parents could be as involved as those of you ladies sitting here in this room, and gentlemen. That's always just not feasible for all of our children and all of our families, right? So you're kind of the surrogate parent involvement. When students see parents dedicated and involved at school, they tend to be more dedicated, and the schools tend to be have greater success. So again, we just really appreciate that, and we appreciate you. Okay, Delaney. This website is going to have a lot of the information that we're going to talk about today, and a lot of the things that cross over with me. Foundation.canyonsdistrict.org, there it is. So in that, you'll see up at the top about us, what we do. So let me just tell you a tiny bit about the foundation. It is a separate 501c3 organization in Canyons that is the fundraising arm of Canyon School District. That may or may not directly apply to you, but housed under that are some things that do. So if you'll click on the volunteer site, all volunteers are asked to volunteer each year to sign up new. There are 2 types of volunteers. There are supervised and unsupervised volunteers. About 98% of our volunteers are going to be supervised, and that means that you are always in the sight line of another adult, principals, teachers, each other, but you're always together. And most of our volunteers fall into that category. Occasionally we'll have an unsupervised volunteer. Unsupervised would be, say, one of our coaching staff that's a volunteer. that may ever be alone with a child. It's also all volunteers that go on overnight field trips, and occasionally there's some others. For instance, maybe you are helping with one of the theater programs and helping size costumes. You may be in a dressing room with students. You would be alone. The unsupervised volunteers, if for any reason you feel like you're ever alone with students or going to be, you would talk to your principal about that. He can send you, if that's determined that you are, he will send you to our HR department totally free of charge. You would be fingerprinted, have a different level of background check to assure that you are good to work with students in an alone capacity. Much higher level of background check. All volunteers, let me pull this off for a minute, all volunteers are background checked through a federal and state database by employees. So when you sign your name up, we have a little work batch of employees that go crazy trying to clear all of you really quite fast because they come in batches, right? Right now in July, we try to get as many as we can signed up in July and August before school starts so that you're ready to go. When we come up on Halloween, if we are in schools doing Halloween parades, when we come up on a field trip or the end of the year parties or a fun run, then we get batches. So if your school has 40 volunteers that haven't signed up, there's likely we are not going to be able to get them cleared that day. So we ask that you try to get as many of your parents, as many of your volunteers signed up and approved ahead of time. And those are for supervised volunteers. You go to this website, you click on the link, you don't have to do that deleting. Click on the link, it'll take you through a form. If you scroll to the bottom of this page, down here on the left-hand side, you'll see where it says Admin and PTA Login. That is something that you will use that other volunteers won't. That gives you the ability to log bulk hours, to log your hours, and to log, like, for your entire board if they're not putting in their hours in the computer themselves. Now, I think I'm 5 years into saying, I strongly advise you to get them to do the work for you so that you're not having to put those hours in, okay? You can do it completely from your cell phone, from your computer at home. You can do it wherever you want. But when you walk into the school, every school has a kiosk. High schools, this is new this year. Our high schools haven't done this much. Some have better than others. But this year, the computer login at every school is going to be part of our contact tracing. Every school, including high schools, should be requiring and expecting volunteers to sign in if they are in the school. So it'll look like this. You'll walk in the front door, you go to the front office, they're going to ask you your health questions, maybe temperature scan you, whatever their protocol is going to be, right? Before you sign in on the computer, and then you will sign in. Now, in hearing this, we're not going to have every volunteer ever known to man walking through the doors. Your principal will likely work with you to have a core group of people that need to be there and that are, what did you call it, Nancy? Essential volunteers, right? Which should include you as PTA presidents, will probably include some others. But you'll be coming. We probably won't, at least at the start, have mass amounts of volunteers coming in the door. If we get back to normal, and that's happening, then you can imagine when we're having to check health before they sign in, you're going to have a line down the block. It's not going to go really fast. So just make sure people are patient, make sure that it's taken very seriously, and please, please, please encourage your front office staffs not to sit there and write names down and say, we'll get back to this later and put it in for you later. We need you to sign in on those computers, okay? So when you're at the schools, the computer log your hours for you. Log in, log out. It tells us who's in the school at any given time. If we need to know that, if we have an emergency, if a fire breaks out, we can pull that information very quickly. We can know, is everybody accounted for because they signed in, they signed out. It's also our safety protocol. You've been background checked if you're a volunteer. If that little machine doesn't spit out your name badge that says volunteer on it, you either haven't submitted your name or you haven't cleared. Either way, you shouldn't be in the school saying you're a volunteer. Staff and kiddos should actually know they have a visitor badge on. That person should never be alone in the school and should not be volunteering in different places. They come in for an event, they leave from an event. That's all visitors are welcome to do, okay? So if grandma and grandpa, in normal times, I'm not saying this is happening right now, but in normal times, grandma and grandpa come to eat. They probably aren't volunteers. They would get a visitor badge. They'd go in and they'd eat with their grandchild. They would leave. They're not volunteering the students, okay? Volunteers, it's very important that only background check people there, because that's our safety protocol to keep your kids safe. Now, this year, we'll talk about this year, it's going to look a little different because likely you're going to be doing a lot of your volunteering from your house, right? Or the park where your team meets 6 feet apart out in the wide open air or whatever. So you do have the ability always to go in the system, until you go back up a little bit, to go up to volunteer login, to log in as a volunteer, and you can log your hours any place, from phone, from computer, you can log your hours there. Now, we've been doing this for several years. There's 3 reports. Remember Tanya told you about 3 reports? There's 3 reports that you are not welcome, that you have to turn in to region PTA and to state PTA. And you're welcome to do that too, but you actually have to do that. Those reports require you to turn in your volunteer hours every quarter. So we have these here on here. If your group is using this, you can use the numbers here. You can pull reports back out of that other place I showed you where you can sign in. You can do that and pull the numbers off the computer and use those numbers. If you are not consistent at it, you don't tend to, your PTA boards don't tend to sign in, they don't tend to use this system, you're going to have to do the old-fashioned way of saying, hey, everybody, report your hours to me, tell me what they are, and you're going to write them down, you're going to turn them in your report. What we have found is that PTA is not using this system very often and very well. When you go into your schools, some of you will sign in, but a lot of you sign in as a regular volunteer, not a PTA volunteer. So we get to the end of the year, Tanya sends me over 3 reports, we tally up those reports, we look here, we tally up here. The numbers don't line up in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes ours are higher, sometimes hers are higher, usually hers are higher, but they're not lining up. So this year we're going to make a change. At the end of the year, I'm not going to ask you for your hours, I'm not going to pull your hours. I'm going to take the total school volunteer numbers and I will subtract out whatever PTA, whatever you've turned into Tanya to get the total hours for PTA, right? And so whatever numbers you get to her, that sticks. Now I tell you that because I will say last year when I said everybody needs to send me their volunteer hours, 8 schools sent them to me. Of those 8 schools, the numbers were off in all but 1 case. So we're not going to try to make those numbers work anymore together. We're just going to simply take whatever you turn into her, take it off the total, that's going to be your PTA volunteer hours. Okay? Karen.
So if you log in and then you forget to log out, does it automatically?
It does log you out after a certain amount of time. It would log you for a little bit more time when you're in there, but it logs you out. I can't remember if it's 2 hours, 4 hours. It does log you out.
On the volunteer login, do you just make up your own, your login and your password on that?
So originally, when you first go in as a PTA president, and I should have checked this before, I can't remember if we've got you in there already or not, but it's first name, dot last name, dot PTA, and then the password is PTA. When you go in, then you change it to be your own password. And I don't know what that is, so when you forget it and you call me and say, I don't know what I changed my password to, I don't know, you'll have to go through the reset steps.
I've been using an app that I can just push start time and end time on my phone, and that has got something, I think it's called Time Clock.
Okay.
But then I can transfer that, so that's been really helpful.
Great suggestion. So just figure this out. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, really quick clarification. You said that it logs you out automatically after like 2 to 4 hours.
I think it's 4 hours.
There are some days when I'm at the school all day long, and I don't, so if I go back at the end of the day and then log out, does it take the entire day? Or
Probably not. I do think it's fairly lenient, but it's not going to be all day for volunteers. It will assume after, I believe it's 4 hours, that you are not there anymore. They don't realize that some of us do spend all of our waking hours inside these schools. I know most of you will. But so that's something good for you to just go in and look at your record once in a while and say, oh, I was there that day all day long. I need to add 8 more hours to that or whatever. So, yeah. Okay, any more questions on the volunteer system? Yes?
Are you saying you want each of our board members that are putting in hours at home to be able to log in?
Yes.
You want everyone to have their own login, to be able to log in their hours?
They're already logged in when they register as a volunteer.
Right.
I do want them to put in their, I'm not going to care this
Their
year.
hours at home.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
If they are volunteering for their school,
Okay.
put them in. Yeah.
Okay. And so they can sign up to, as an
All volunteers do it right here. They sign in as a volunteer, they're registered, they go to volunteer login, they're in. You're the only one that can use that other spot that has permissions to use that for reports and to pull.
Okay, I was like, you want everyone in
No,
there?
no,
Okay.
they just use right here.
Okay.
Yep,
Question.
yes.
So it looks just like it does when you're at the school. I mean, like, is it kind of the same? Like, when you go into school and you type your name and your birthday.
That's a little different. It's a different screen for sure. It
But
doesn't,
goes to the same place.
yes, it goes to the same place.
And so at home, when you click on it, you have to pick a building. If you're doing it at home, you just pick the building you're doing it for.
Yes, yes, you will still be able to pick your building. If you click on the volunteer login, it will take you, and you can pick where you're at. It's also when you volunteer, you're assigned, you're not assigned, you pick the schools.
Yeah.
But if you happen to, especially for our council and region people, maybe at any school at any given time, if they pick a different school, they have the option to do that.
One more question. So I would send them to foundation.transdistrict.org, like they click on volunteer, and then they click on that green volunteer login.
Yes,
That's it, okay.
yep. You're the only one that knows the secret little hidden passwords at the bottom, yes.
Hold on a minute.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Real quick.
Yes,
So if we do use that admin PTA button and we choose our school, will those hours be counted towards the volunteer hours of that school?
so if you're logging in to log in your personal hours, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to go here and do this, but you can put in additional hours. You can put in bulk hours. You can put in, like if your whole board fills out a piece of paper and last month they volunteered a total of 30 hours, you can go in and put in 30 hours. The problem with doing that is if they also happen to go in and didn't tell you, they also did here, so you need to make the delineation. If you've logged your hours in the computer, don't put them here, or put them here and don't put them on the, you need to kind of keep track of that. So there's some honesty to it, right? that you're coming up with accurate numbers. That's up to how you want to run it. If you choose to use this out of signing in at the school, that's not an option. But if you choose to use this at home and have your board do it this way so you're not having to completely hound them for their hours all the time, then I would suggest just telling them, hey, even at a meeting saying, hey, everybody pull up your phones, go in and put your hours in, even do it that way, and then you can use this system. But starting this year, this is for your convenience, not for me. I'm going to take it off the reports that you turn into the region.
So the question is, are those hours that we're going to be taking off, if we enter them through the PTA link, will those register for the volunteer hours?
Delaney, will you click on that volunteer green button?
And
Yeah.
so you would have to log in as a volunteer. That's why I didn't pull it up, because you'd have to go through and log in.
I think maybe she's asking, like, when you volunteer, you click on the volunteer login, the PTA link at the bottom is only to, like, pull the reports for your school.
Right.
Or like bulk hours?
And for you as presidents to put in bulk hours.
Yeah, we need to do both. Like last year, I used it 3 times.
Well, if people are logging in the volunteer hours.
So when you go back and click on the PTA admin, I don't know if it will log. It logs me in differently than it does you also. It may not look the same. Oh, you're on your computer, not mine. Sorry. Anyway, when you get here, you're going to put in your username, password, volunteer login, and it's going to bring up some options for you. One of them is to put in bulk hours. One of them is to pull up reports. I can't remember what else. So this would be bulk hours. You're not saying I was at the school from this time to this time. Bulk hours, it's like last month I did 13 hours. The other way, you're saying I was at the school this day, this day, this day, from this hour to this hour. You're putting in specifics. So only PTA presidents can add bulk hours, can add for group. Nobody else, individuals cannot do that. So, yes.
So your caution about make sure we're not doing it and individuals, it's basically so we're not double counting hours.
Correct.
I didn't say I was at the meeting, but then the president logs in.
Correct.
I was in the meeting with everyone else.
Correct. Yes, and that's up to you to figure out. Yes.
Sorry, Susan, I think what your concern is if you're volunteering at different schools, when you go in and log in, if you're registered at those schools, you can select what school, and that will count towards that school's volunteer hours. No, that's not, okay, sorry.
Talk to me afterwards and I'll try to answer your question. Sorry, I'm not quite getting it. I'm going to move this before I kill myself. Okay.
If you were volunteering from home, you
Yeah.
still log
Okay. We are going to have a need that that was supposed to be sent to me before this and did not happen, so I will get that from you. But our ISD department needs a ton of help in the next couple of weeks to put together manipulative kits. So if any of you have time, or any of your staffs have time, I will send it out to you as soon as I get that. They were building it like a sign-up genius. It would come over to the district office building in the basement, and you would come in and spend some hours putting together kits that will be sent out to all the schools. They talked about doing it at each school, so you would just go in, they want to know if the PTA could rally at each school, and then there were some problems with doing that. So it's going to be all done in the district office building. We can only have a few people there at a time, but you will be seeing that coming from me as soon as I get it with a sign up. So if you have any time to volunteer to help with that, or can send that out to your boards or your parents and say, hey, they really need some help getting, and so these are for the online kids, so when they're at home doing their schooling, they have the same kits that they do in schools to be able to use, to be able to do their lessons with online. So you'll be seeing that coming from me. Next is advertising. Maybe, let's see if that's next. That's what happens when I build a PowerPoint late at night, right? Yes, it is. Also on the foundation website, under advertising fundraising, stay at the top for a minute, please. You will see these. So partnerships, fundraising, every PTA, every school is allowed 2 fundraisers. Now high schools are allowed a bajillion fundraisers, but the school is only allowed 2 fundraisers. Okay? One is the school typically, one is the PTA typically. Now some schools have chosen to merge those into one. Some schools have only do one. They may just allow PTA to do their fundraisers, the school may not. Looks different, but they're all allowed 2. Okay? If you do your fundraiser jointly with PTA, with the school, so you have one, likely you're not going to do a fun run this fall, but say it's a normal year, we'll all imagine for a minute, and you're doing a fun run, and that fun run benefits both the school and the PTA. There is a form, I'll take you to the form in a minute. There's a form, an MOU form, Memorandum of Understanding, between you and the principal that says, this is what we're doing a joint fundraiser, this is our goal, this is how much the PTA needs to run their budget, this is how much the school gets. Now, listen carefully to this piece. If you're doing a joint fundraiser, you're going to make that decision in a conversation with the principal ahead of time, right? We need to raise, our PTA budget needs $8,000 this year to do what we need to do this year. That's our budget. That's what we're going to try to raise. The school then is going to have everything after that. Or we hope to raise $20,000, we're going to split it down the middle, 10 and 10. Whatever decision you reach with your principal, okay? What I don't want to see is saying, the PTA is going to do this, it's a joint fundraiser, the PTA is going to do this, and then we're going to give you to the school in increments what we want to give you. Because then I get calls from the principal saying, we did this joint fundraiser, but PTA won't let us spend our portion on something. Okay, you make your decision ahead of time. How much do you need? How much does the school need? That form, that MOU, you keep a copy, principal keeps a copy, and a copy comes into me. When I get the inevitable phone call at the end of the year from either you or the principal that says, this didn't go quite right, we didn't get our money, or we didn't spend, or we were asked to give too much to school, I'm going to pull that form out, and I'm going to read what you guys agreed to, and I'm going to remind you this is what you agreed to, and that's what we're going to operate off of. If I don't have that form, I have absolutely no way of knowing what that agreement was. So make sure you're talking to your principals and having that agreement.
PTA discourages the joint fundraisers for this reason. The MOU is very helpful, but we still discourage joint fundraisers. So I'll just put that out.
But we still have schools that do them. So if you do them, do them this way. So on partnerships, so fundraisers, you have one. Now, what that looks like is your big fundraiser, whatever it may be. Middle schools oftentimes do memory books. Others are sometimes a fun run, like I said, or you may be selling chocolate bars, whatever your fundraiser is. You have one. So if you also are selling shirts, or you decide you're going to sell school masks this year, or whatever you decide to do, that's another fundraiser. You only have one. So you want to pick the one. Every couple of years I see a PTA that picks one that just isn't going to be really productive money-wise, right? And then they're like, oh, but that one did only made us $100. We want to do this other one that's going to be 8,000. You only have one. And that is to protect you as parents so that our schools aren't constantly fundraising, except for high schools, and they're their own beast. But those are teams, those are clubs, those are other things. But the PTA is not contributing to the onslaught of fundraising for parents, okay? So you get one. So choose wisely what you want to do and try to make it a success. Now, what does that look like this year? Good question. I strongly, within the fundraising category, Delaney, click on that. Yeah, she can hopefully click through on that. There we go. Over here on the side, you will see approved traditional product fundraisers. Those are your cookie sales, gift wrap, whatever you can think of to sell. You have to use an approved fundraiser in Canyons. These are companies that we've vetted, that we've talked to, that have good business practices, that have come to us. Really easy to get on that list. But if they're not on that list, schools and you guys can't use them. The second one, same thing, approved online fundraisers. And the third one's charitable. Charitable probably won't impact you guys much. That's charities that have coordinated with us and would love if on the school charitable fundraisers that they use them. That's more contact information for our schools. But the approved ones and the approved online fundraisers, I think it's going to be difficult, not impossible, difficult to do product fundraising this year, at least this fall. You may be able to figure out how, and I'm not telling you not to do it. Work with your principal, see if you can figure out what it looks like. How do you sell it without sending the kids out talking to anybody, without having tables, without contacting the public? If there's a way, you're open to do it. I think it's going to be much difficult. You may want to seriously consider going to an online fundraiser this year, which is essentially called no-fuss fundraising, right? Where you send out to your parents, this is a weird year. We're not going to sell our usual chocolate bars. We're going to do an online fundraiser, and just please donate here and try to do your fundraising that year. Some of you did not get to have your fundraisers in the spring, whatever your thing was. So your budgets may be tightening a little, as Tommy referenced. That's true for all of us, okay? So figure out your budget accordingly. If you really need to do your fundraiser this year because you're running low on your budget, I would strongly encourage you to really think creatively. I'm happy to talk to any of you about that and help you think through that. Go back, Delaney, to the next one. So partnerships are a little different. That's where a business says, you bring us business, we'll give you a percentage back. So like a Chick-fil-A Spirit Night, which she just sent me actually while we've been sitting here, that she can't do the breakfast this year, but she is going to do something different, and I couldn't read it while I'm sitting here, so I'll have to tell you that. Yes?
Hi, so the Mental Health store,
Yes.
You didn't have products available there. Is that considered a fundraiser? So we put our No Fuss fundraiser in our Mental Health store, and explain,
That is a fundraiser.
it's a fundraiser. However, we are offering masks that have a little cloth cap.
At cost, that's fine.
So if you want to get full shirts and you want to
And we have
$2 off of every shirt, you can't do that.
Not if you're doing another fundraiser.
What about yearbooks? If you sell yearbooks at cost?
Not if that's your fundraiser. You sell them for whatever you want. Middle schools, typically that is their fundraiser, so they're selling them for a profit, and that is their fundraiser. But you're also not selling t-shirts. If you're doing t-shirts, you need to be pretty close at cost. So if the t-shirts, $5.49 and you sell them for $6, that's not a big deal. But if you're selling for $10, that's a bigger deal. That's a fundraiser. Yes?
So, at the beginning of the year, we asked for donations when people are signing up and not call it a fundraiser.
Nope. That's a fundraiser.
Any
You're asking your parents for money, that's a fundraiser.
So if the PTA dues that we're supposed to pay.
Dues are not a fundraiser. Dues are totally different.
But if the PTA dues are $4 and we say our PTA dues are $7, then is that a fundraiser?
No.
So we can charge however much we want for our dues and not.
In your bylaws.
It's in your bylaws.
Okay.
And I will tell you the highest dues in the school, those are not meant to cover your cost and your expenses. It's not meant to cover your budget.
Dues is not a fundraiser? Yeah.
Madam Chair, if we're just asking for donations,
I'm sorry.
if we're just asking for donations and
accept donations. You can't always go out and push people to be donating to you on an ongoing basis. All of our fundraisers are supposed to. There are some exceptions, right? Memory books are usually sold all year. The marching band usually fundraises all year. But fundraisers are meant to be a 2-3 week, maybe a month block of time. And it is a fundraiser. You're putting a push out. You're saying, this is our fundraiser. This is what we're going to do with this money. We're asking you to give to us. PTAs can always accept donations. So if people are wanting to donate, fantastic. But if you're pushing it nonstop, it's a fundraiser, right? Terry?
Remember how while you have the ability to set the price of your membership, it must reflect the amount that is in your currently approved bylaws. You cannot change that number until you've gone through the process of changing your dues rate and have approval from the state bylaw specialist. So make sure that number matches what's in your bylaws.
And you want your memberships, you want members, right? You want people to participate, you want to be able to communicate with them, you want to be able to talk to them, and so you want members to join your PTA to be supportive, and you want to be inclusive of your broader community. So you don't want to put your membership at a rate that is going to be difficult to make people join. So that's one reason it's not your fundraiser. Plus, it doesn't go to your cost, to your fundraising goals. So your fundraiser is what pays for your budget, right? So your budget is somewhat set off of how much you make off your fundraiser. Yes?